Hello, and welcome to TerraNash. I'm Aiden, your narrator for tonight. Let's take this time together to step away from the rush of the day and ease into a world of dreams and wonder. Tonight, I'll be sharing a story that takes us into a world of noble houses, ancient alliances, and forgotten truths. A tale where peace teeters on the edge of shadows and courage lights the way. But before we begin, we'd love to hear from you. Where are you listening from? And what time is it as you settle in to hear this story? We'd also love to know what kinds of stories you'd enjoy next. Your thoughts and suggestions inspire us, so please share them in the comments below. If you'd like even more from us, you can check out our Patreon for early access to all our stories and a curated Spotify playlist as well. Oh, and I wanted to share an important update with you. Currently, less than 10% of our viewers are subscribed to the channel, which means more than 90% of you haven't subscribed yet. If you've been enjoying our bedtime stories, subscribing is a simple and free way to support us. Reaching 1,000 subscribers will allow us to remove all mid-roll ads, ensuring a completely uninterrupted and relaxing experience for you. Your support means the world to us, and together we can make TerraNash an even more peaceful place for storytelling. At the moment, we aim to remove all mid-roll ads from our videos to provide a seamless and uninterrupted viewing experience. Unfortunately, we are unable to do so because we have not yet reached the threshold required to gain control over ad placements. Now, let's settle in together. Wherever you are, let your body gently sink into comfort. Breathe in slowly and out. Let any tension you're holding softly melt away. There's nothing you need to do but be here, right now. As your breaths grow slower, feel a sense of calm wash over you. The day has done its part. Now, it's time for rest. With your mind at ease and your heart open to wonder, let's begin our story tonight. The cool evening air carried the soft fragrance of wildflowers and damp earth as Arya walked along the tranquil shores of the shimmering lake. A gentle breeze stirred her dark curls, and the silver light of a full moon bathed the landscape in a peaceful glow. The night was unusually still. The usual rustling of leaves and distant calls of birds replaced by a deep and serene quiet. Arya was a healer by trade, known across the Riverlands for her skill with herbs and potions. Yet, tonight, she sought no remedies, only the solace found by the water's edge. The day had been long, filled with tending to the wounds of weary travelers and soothing the fevers of restless children. Now, with the stars sparkling above, she allowed herself a rare moment of peace. She knelt by the water and cupped her hands to capture its cool essence. As the ripples spread across the lake's surface, the stars seemed to dance, shimmering with an ethereal beauty that never failed to captivate her. Her grandmother's voice echoed gently in her memory. Strange things happen when the stars meet the water. Magic listens when the world is quiet enough to hear. Arya smiled faintly at the thought. She had always dismissed such tales as the whimsical musings of an elder who had seen too many seasons pass. Yet tonight, something about the air the water, and the silence felt different, as though the very fabric of the night held a secret waiting to be told. The soft rustle of leaves brought her back to the present. The sound was faint, but deliberate, not the random whisper of the wind. Arya stood, her senses sharpened by years of wandering through wild places. Her eyes scanned the shadows, searching for the source of the disturbance. And then it appeared. Dark wings slicing through the moonlight. A raven, larger than any she had ever seen, soared gracefully toward her. Its feathers gleamed like polished obsidian under the moon's silvery gaze. The bird circled above her for a moment, before descending swiftly, dropping a small parchment at her feet before vanishing into the night sky. Startled but curious, Arya knelt and picked up the folded parchment. The edges were worn, the ink had faded slightly, as though it had traveled far before reaching her. With careful fingers, she unfolded the message, the faint scent of aged parchment mingling with the cool night air. The message was brief but cryptic. The moon rises where the lion bows to the wolf. A chill ran down Arya's spine, despite the warmth of the night. The words were puzzling, yet they carried an unmistakable weight, as if they held the key to something long forgotten. The lion and the wolf, symbols of House Lannister and House Stark, ancient rivals whose enmity had shaped the history of Westeros. What could this message mean now, in a time of fragile peace, and who had sent it? Arya knew only one thing for certain. This night, so serene and beautiful, had marked the beginning of a journey she had not expected to take. The following morning, Arya set out from her modest dwelling by the lake, the parchment carefully tucked into the folds of her cloak. The golden light of dawn spread across the land, warming the dew-covered grass and casting long shadows through the trees. Birds chirped merrily overhead, blissfully unaware of the questions that weighed heavily on Arya's mind. She had debated throughout the night whether to seek counsel or dismiss the message as a strange prank, but something about the raven's arrival and the ancient symbolism of the words compelled her to act. If there was any wisdom to be found, it would surely lie in the heart of Winterfell, the seat of the noble Stark family. The journey north was not without its challenges. The roads, though safer than they had been during times of war, still treacherous in places. Arya's path led through dense forests and across swift rivers, each step bringing her closer to the ancient stronghold. Winterfell rose from the horizon like a fortress born of stone and memory. Its grey towers stood resolute against the sky, a testament to the enduring strength of House Stark. Arya's heart swelled with a mixture of awe and familiarity as she approached the gates. The guards, clad in the familiar grey and white of the Starks, recognized her immediately and granted her passage without question. As she entered the courtyard, the sounds of daily life surrounded her. The clang of blacksmiths hammering iron, the laughter of children playing, and the comforting aroma of bread baking in the kitchens. Jon Snow, now a respected lord with silver streaks in his dark hair, awaited her in the great hall. His presence was commanding, yet kind, a reflection of the many burdens he had carried over the years. "Arya," Jon greeted warmly, embracing her like a long-lost sister. "It's been too long." "It has," Arya agreed, smiling despite the weight of the parchment hidden beneath her cloak. "But I'm afraid this isn't just a friendly visit." Jon's expression grew serious as they sat by the roaring fire. Arya recounted the events of the previous night, the raven, the message, and the strange feeling that had lingered in the air. Jon listened intently, his brows furrowing in thought. When she finished, he leaned back in his chair, his gaze distant. "The message you carry," he said slowly, "may mean far more than you realize. There are old truths yet untold between our houses, secrets that were buried long before the wars." Arya's pulse quickened. "Do you think this is a warning, or a call to action?" "Perhaps both," Jon said gravely. "But one thing is clear. We need to uncover the meaning before it's too late." As the fire crackled between them, Arya knew that her journey was only just beginning. The peaceful shores of the lake felt like a distant memory now, replaced by the rising tension of an ancient mystery that refused to stay hidden. The cold winds of Winterfell swept through the ancient halls as Arya followed Jon down a narrow stone passageway. Torches flickered against the rough-hewn walls, casting dancing shadows that seemed to whisper secrets of a time long past. The weight of the parchment hidden within Arya's cloak pressed heavily against her, as though the cryptic message itself demanded urgency. Jon's face was set in grim determination as they descended deeper into the heart of Winterfell. "Where are we going?" Arya asked, her voice steady despite the unease creeping into her chest. "To the crypts," Jon said without looking back. "If there are answers to be found, they'll be there." Arya had explored the crypts countless times as a child, daring herself to walk among the solemn statues of the ancient Starks, whose watchful stone eyes seemed to follow her every step. Yet now, the familiar descent felt different, heavier, laden with the weight of secrets too vast to comprehend. They reached the iron gate that marked the entrance to the crypts. The air was colder here, tinged with the scent of earth and stone. Jon pushed the gate open with a creak that echoed through the silence. Rows of statues stood in solemn formation, each one guarding the memory of a Stark long gone. Arya's gaze lingered on the likeness of her father, Eddard Stark, whose stone face bore the same quiet strength she remembered so vividly. "This way," Jon said, leading her toward a secluded alcove, partially hidden by an overgrown tangle of ivy. Arya frowned. She had never noticed this section of the crypts before. Jon knelt by the base of one of the statues and brushed away a thick layer of dust, revealing an ancient carving etched into the stone. A lion intertwined with a wolf, their forms locked in a fierce yet elegant embrace. The symbolism was unmistakable. "The lion and the wolf," Arya murmured, her breath catching. Jon nodded. "This carving predates the founding of the great houses as we know them. There was a time when Stark and Lannister were not enemies, but allies, bound by blood and loyalty." Arya's mind raced. Why was this hidden? "Because history is written by victors," Jon said bitterly, "and some truths are deemed too dangerous to remember." He traced his fingers along the edge of the carving, pressing firmly against a small indentation. With a low rumble, the stone shifted, revealing a narrow passageway descending into darkness. Arya's heart quickened. What's down there? Jon's expression was grave. Only one way to find out. Without hesitation, Arya stepped into the passageway, the shadows swallowing her whole. The air grew colder as Arya and Jon descended deeper into the hidden passage. The flickering light of their torches barely illuminated the rough stone walls, which were slick with moisture and marked by strange, ancient symbols. Arya's fingers brushed against one of the carvings. It felt oddly warm beneath her touch, as though it pulsed with a life of its own. "Do you think anyone has been down here in recent years?" Arya asked, her voice low. Jon shook his head. "I doubt it. If they had, we'd have heard tales." The passage twisted and turned before opening into a vast underground chamber. The ceiling arched high above them, supported by ancient stone pillars etched with intricate designs of wolves and lions intertwined in graceful harmony. At the center of the chamber stood a circular dais, its surface carved with runes that glowed faintly in hues of silver and gold. Arya's breath caught in her throat. "What is this place?" Jon's voice was filled with awe. A council chamber, perhaps. A meeting place for the ancestors of our houses. They stepped onto the dais, the runes flaring brighter with each step. Arya felt a strange warmth spread through her chest, as though the very stones beneath her feet recognized her presence. Jon knelt beside one of the runes, his brow furrowed in concentration. "These symbols, they tell a story." "What kind of story?" Arya asked. Her curiosity piqued. Jon traced his fingers over the glowing lines. "A story of a pact forged long ago. A bond between the wolf and the lion to protect something of great power." Arya's mind raced. What were they protecting? Jon's expression darkened. "I'm not sure, but whatever it was hidden so well that even time itself forgot it." As they stood in the center of the dais, a low hum filled the air, resonating through the chamber like the echo of a distant song. The runes pulsed with light, forming intricate patterns that seemed to dance across the stone floor. Suddenly, a beam of golden light shot upward from the dais, illuminating the chamber in radiant brilliance. Arya shielded her eyes, her heart pounding in her chest. When the light faded, a figure stood before them. A translucent form, clad in ancient robes, their features regal and serene. The apparition's voice echoed through the chamber, clear and commanding. "You who bear the blood of wolf and lion," the figure intoned, "have awakened the legacy of the great houses. The path before you is fraught with peril, but it is only through unity that you shall find the truth." Arya and Jon exchanged a glance, the weight of the figure's words settling heavily upon them. "What truth?" Arya demanded, her voice steady despite the tremor in her chest. The figure's gaze softened. "The truth that will change the fate of Westeros forever." As the apparition faded into the ether, Arya felt a surge of determination rise within her. The peaceful shores of the lake and the familiar halls of Winterfell were far behind her now. A new journey lay ahead, a journey that would test the bonds of loyalty, courage, and trust. And though the path was uncertain, Arya knew one thing for sure. She would see it through to the end. The flickering torches illuminated the solemn crypt as Arya and Jon stood in silence, the echoes of the apparition's words lingering in the vast chamber. The air was thick with anticipation, as though even the ancient stones held their breath, waiting for the next move. Arya's fingers tightened around the folded parchment hidden within her cloak. "The truth that will change the fate of Westeros," she repeated under her breath. "What does that even mean?" Jon's brow furrowed, his voice low and thoughtful. "I don't know. But this isn't something we can keep to ourselves. If there's a secret buried here, something powerful enough to bring peace or war, we need to uncover it." Arya nodded, her resolve hardening. "Then we start here. This place was hidden for a reason, and I doubt it was just to protect pretty carvings." They began to search the chamber, their eyes scanning every rune and symbol etched into the stone walls. The pillars bore intricate designs of wolves and lions locked in fierce yet harmonious poses, their forms blending seamlessly into patterns that seemed to shift under the flickering torchlight. Arya's gaze landed on a section of the wall where the carvings formed a circular motif, different from the surrounding designs. She ran her fingers over the cool stone, feeling a subtle vibration beneath her touch. "There's something here," she called out. Jon joined her, his expression sharp with focus. Together, they pressed against the stone, the rough surface grinding under their palms. With a low rumble, the wall shifted, revealing a narrow alcove bathed in pale blue light. Inside the alcove stood a pedestal, atop which rested an ancient tome bound in dark, weathered leather. The cover was embossed with the same symbol they had seen throughout the chamber, the lion and the wolf entwined. Arya's breath caught in her throat. This must be it. Jon's voice was filled with awe. The pact of the great houses. They lifted the tome carefully, the pages crackling softly as they opened it. The text was written in an elegant hand, the language old but familiar. Diagrams and maps filled the margins, detailing alliances, battles, and oaths sworn in blood. Arya's eyes narrowed as she read aloud. "In times of great darkness, when the bonds of loyalty are frayed and shadows threaten the realm, the wolf and the lion shall rise as one. Their unity shall guard the light against the coming storm." Jon's voice was grim. "This isn't just history, it's a prophecy." Arya felt a chill run down her spine. A storm. Could it be talking about something more than war? Maybe something that's yet to come? Jon met her gaze, the flicker of uncertainty mirrored in his eyes. "If it is, then we need to prepare, and we can't do it alone." The weight of the ancient tome in their hands was nothing compared to the burden now resting on their shoulders. The peaceful world they had fought so hard to maintain was on the brink of unraveling, and only the unity of ancient enemies could save it. The morning sun cast long shadows across Winterfell as Arya and Jon emerged from the crypts, their minds heavy with the revelations of the night. The ancient tome was carefully wrapped in cloth, hidden from prying eyes as they made their way to the great hall. Arya's steps were brisk, her determination unwavering. "We need to send ravens," she said firmly. "If the prophecy is true, the other houses need to know what we've found." Jon nodded, his expression resolute. "But it won't be easy to convince them. The scars of the wars still linger, and trust is fragile." Arya's lips curled into a smirk. Since when has anything worth doing ever been easy? Jon chuckled softly despite the weight of their mission. Fair point. They reached the hall, where Maester Luwin's successor, Maester Harwin, awaited them by the Ravenry. His lined face was etched with curiosity as he observed the seriousness in their expressions. "Lord Stark, Lady Arya," he greeted with a respectful nod. "How may I be of service?" "We need to send urgent messages to the major houses," Jon said, "and it's imperative the contents remain confidential." Harwin's brows lifted slightly, but he nodded without question. "Of course. I'll see to it personally." Arya handed him the carefully crafted missives they had written, each one detailing the discovery of the ancient pact and the looming threat foretold by the prophecy. The names of those who had received the messages were etched into the parchment. Tyrion Lannister of Casterly Rock, Samwell Tarly at the Citadel, and Gendry Baratheon of Storm's End, among others. As the ravens took flight, their black wings cutting through the crisp northern sky, Arya felt a flicker of hope. The message was out, the first step taken toward unity. But she knew better than to expect immediate cooperation. Jon seemed to share her thoughts. "The Lannisters won't be easy to sway," he said grimly. Arya's smirk returned. "Tyrion's smart enough to see reason. He knows what's at stake." Jon nodded thoughtfully. "And Sam will understand the importance of ancient prophecies. Gendry, well, he's loyal. If we can rally him, the Stormlands might follow." Arya crossed her arms, her gaze distant. "It's not just about alliances, though. We need to be ready for whatever this storm is. And that means finding out more about the prophecy." Jon's voice was steady. "We'll face it together, like we always have." As the last raven disappeared into the horizon, Arya felt a surge of determination. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with danger and doubt. They were Starks, strong, resilient, and unyielding. And when the storm came, they would be ready. The winds howled through Winterfell, carrying with them the bitter bite of winter's relentless breath. Snow danced in swirling patterns across the courtyard, blanketing the ancient stones in pristine white. Arya stood by the narrow window of the great hall, her sharp eyes fixed on the horizon. Ravens had been sent days ago, yet no replies had come. Her fingers tapped impatiently against the hilt of the dagger strapped to her side. "What's taking them so long?" she muttered under her breath. Jon approached from behind, his heavy boots crunching against the stone floor. "Patience, Arya," he said calmly. "Tyrion will respond. He always does." Arya arched an eyebrow. "And if he doesn't? Then we'll go to him ourselves." Jon's voice was resolute, leaving no room for doubt. Arya smirked. "I was hoping you'd say that." Before Jon could respond, A sharp caw echoed through the hall. One of the black-feathered ravens swooped down from the rafters, landing gracefully on the arm of Meister Harwin, who had just entered with a fur-lined cloak billowing behind him. "A message has arrived from Casterly Rock," Harwin announced, his voice steady despite the obvious tension. Jon and Arya exchanged a glance. "Finally," Arya said under her breath. Harwin unrolled the parchment, his eyes scanning the elegant script before handing it to Jon. "It bears Tyrion Lannister's seal," he confirmed. Jon read the letter aloud, his voice steady despite the ominous words. "To Jon Snow, Lord of Winterfell, and Arya Stark, Lady of the North, I received your raven and understand the gravity of your message. While prophecies and ancient pacts often belong to the realm of scholars and fools, I've lived long enough to know that history has a way of repeating itself when ignored. I will come north at once, bringing trusted allies. Together, we shall seek this truth and face the storm it foretells. May the gods, old and new, watch over us. Tyrion Lannister." Arya let out a low whistle. Didn't think he'd actually come himself. Jon folded the parchment. "That means he knows it's serious. Tyrion doesn't leave his comforts unless there's no other choice." Arya's expression turned thoughtful. "And if he's coming north, others might follow. We might just have a chance." Harwin cleared his throat gently. "Another message has arrived as well. This one from Samwell Tarly at the Citadel." Arya's face lit up. "Now that's a good sign. Sam never lets us down." Jon took the parchment and read it silently, his expression darkening as he scanned the page. "He's found something," Jon said grimly. "Something buried deep in the archives about the Pact. And the storm that's coming." Arya tilted her head. "What kind of storm?" Jon's voice was grave. "A darkness that moves not just through men, but through the very fabric of the realm. And it's coming faster than we thought." The weight of his words hung heavy in the air, echoing through the ancient halls of Winterfell. The storm was no longer a distant threat. It was on their doorstep. The days that followed were filled with preparation and tension. Winterfell, though accustomed to the bitter chill of the north, now buzzed with a sense of unease as messages from distant lands trickled in. Tyrion Lannister arrived first, his golden hair dulled by the journey, but his sharp wit as keen as ever. He dismounted from his horse with a flourish, shaking snow from his cloak as Arya and Jon approached to greet him. "Lord Snow," Tyrion said with a sly smile, "or do you prefer King in the North these days?" Jon shook his head, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "Just Jon." Tyrion's gaze shifted to Arya. "And you must be the infamous Lady Arya. I've heard tales of your exploits, many of which I doubt are suitable for polite company." Arya smirked. "Good thing I'm not polite then." Tyrion chuckled, his breath fogging in the cold air. "I think I'm going to enjoy this visit." As they led Tyrion into the warmth of Winterfell's great hall, the heavy wooden doors creaked open once more, revealing Samwell Tarly bundled in thick furs, his round face flushed from the cold. Beside him stood Gilly, cradling their young son. "Sam," Jon greeted warmly, embracing his old friend. "It's good to see you." Sam's face was serious despite the warmth of the reunion. I came as soon as I got your message. What I found in the archives. It's troubling, John. Very troubling. They gathered around the great oak table in the hall, the fire crackling in the hearth, casting flickering shadows across their faces. The ancient tome lay open before them, its pages filled with cryptic runes and intricate diagrams. Sam pointed to a section of the text. This prophecy speaks of a force older than any of us, a darkness that feeds on chaos and division. The storm it brings isn't just weather or war, it's something far worse. Tyrion leaned forward, his brow furrowed. And you believe this threat is real? Sam nodded solemnly. I've seen references to it in multiple sources. The ancient pact between the wolf and the lion wasn't just about politics, it was about survival. Arya's eyes narrowed. So how do we stop it? Sam's voice was steady. We need to unite the great houses, just as they did long ago. The prophecy says that only through unity can we stand against the storm. Tyrion sighed heavily. That's easier said than done. The scars of war run deep, and trust is in short supply. Jon's voice was firm. Then we'll rebuild that trust, one step at a time. Arya's dagger gleamed in the firelight as she tapped it against the table. And if anyone refuses to stand with us, Jon's gaze was steely, then they'll fall alone. The room fell into a heavy silence, the gravity of their mission sinking in. Winterfell had become the heart of a new alliance, a beacon of hope against an ancient threat. As the storm gathered on the horizon, Arya, Jon, Tyrion, and Sam knew one thing for certain. This was only the beginning. But together, they would face whatever came next, armed with courage, loyalty, and the unbreakable bonds of the wolf and the lion. The wind howled fiercely beyond the walls of Winterfell, its icy tendrils creeping through every crevice. The ancient stones of the Great Hall bore witness to tense discussions and urgent plans as the gathering of unlikely allies reached its peak. Jon Snow stood at the head of the great oak table, flanked by Tyrion Lannister and Arya Stark. Samwell Tarly sat nearby, poring over ancient texts illuminated by flickering candlelight. The great houses won't all heed the call, Tyrion said, swirling a goblet of wine. His voice carried the weight of a man who had seen the treacheries of politics firsthand. Many still bear grudges, and others have grown comfortable behind their gilded walls. Arya leaned back in her chair, her dagger spinning deftly between her fingers. Let them cower. Winter doesn't care for gold or grudges. When the storm comes, it'll sweep them all away. Jon's voice was calm, but resolute. We can't afford division. The pact our ancestors forged was meant for times like these. The wolf and the lion stood together once, and we must do so again. Sam looked up from his book, his brow furrowed. There's something else. The texts speak of a forgotten flame, a fire buried deep beneath the mountains of the north. They called it the Heart of Ice and Fire. Legend says it has the power to shield the realm from darkness. Tyrion raised an eyebrow. A poetic name. But legends rarely come with directions, do they? Sam's lips twitched into a brief smile. No, but there's a clue. It mentions a hidden path beyond the Frostfangs, guarded by ancient runes. Jon nodded thoughtfully. If this flame is real, we need to find it. Arya stood abruptly, her eyes gleaming with determination. Then let's go. The longer we wait, the stronger this darkness becomes. Tyrion sighed dramatically. Why is it that every time I find myself in the north, someone proposes a perilous journey through ice and death? Arya smirked. Because you love it. The preparations were swift. Armed with Sam's map and supplies, they set out at dawn, a small but determined company riding into the vast, frozen wilderness beyond Winterfell. The landscape was harsh and unforgiving, each gust of wind slicing through their cloaks like a blade. As they ascended the treacherous paths of the Frostfangs, whispers carried on the wind, spoke of ancient things, memories of a time when magic thrived and shadows walked freely. Jon's grip on his sword tightened as unease crept into his heart. "Do you hear that?" Arya asked, her voice barely audible above the wind. Jon nodded. "The mountain speaks." Tyrion shivered despite his thick furs. "Charming place. Remind me never to vacation here." They pressed on, guided by Sam's careful notes and Arya's keen instincts. The path grew narrower, flanked by jagged cliffs that loomed ominously above them. Just when it seemed the way forward was lost, Arya spotted faint carvings on the rock face, ancient runes glowing softly in the dim light. "This is it," Sam confirmed, his breath visible in the frigid air. "The entrance to the heart of ice and fire." Jon stepped forward, his hand brushing against the runes. The stone trembled under his touch, and with a low rumble, a hidden passage revealed itself, descending into the depths of the mountain. The company exchanged wary glances before Jon led the way into the unknown. The descent into the heart of the mountain was both awe-inspiring and unsettling. The air grew warmer with each step, a stark contrast to the bitter cold outside. Luminous crystals lined the cavern walls, casting ethereal light across the path. The echoes of their footsteps mingled with the faint hum of ancient power. Sam's voice was hushed with reverence. "This place, it's older than any history I've ever read." Tyrion glanced around, his usual cynicism tempered by awe. "I'd wager even the dragons never found this place." As they reached the cavern's core, a breathtaking sight unfolded before them. A vast chamber dominated by a swirling vortex of flame and ice, suspended in perfect harmony. The elements danced together in a mesmerizing display, neither overpowering the other. "The heart of ice and fire," Arya whispered, her voice filled with wonder. Jon stepped forward, the weight of destiny pressing heavily upon him. "This is what we came for, the flame that can protect the realm." Sam nodded. "But it's not just about finding it." The text spoke of a ritual, a binding that must be performed to awaken its true power. Tyrion's brow furrowed. "And let me guess, this ritual comes with certain risks?" Sam's silence was answer enough. Jon took a steadying breath. "If it's the only way to protect the realm, Then we do it. Arya's voice was firm. You're not doing this alone, Jon. Together, they stood at the edge of the swirling vortex, their hands clasped in unity. Sam recited the ancient words, his voice steady despite the trembling of the ground beneath them. The vortex roared to life, flames and ice converging into a blinding surge of energy that enveloped them. For a moment, there was nothing but light, a brilliant, overwhelming light that seemed to stretch across time and space. Memories and dreams intertwined, and the weight of countless generations pressed upon them. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the light receded. The chamber was still once more, the vortex now a steady, glowing beacon of warmth and protection. It's done, Sam said softly, awe evident in his voice. Jon's gaze was steady. The realm is safe, for now. Tyrion let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. I'll drink to that. As they made their way back toward Winterfell, a sense of peace settled over them. The bonds forged in fire and ice had not only protected the realm, but had also healed old wounds and strengthened new alliances. Arya grinned mischievously at Tyrion. Still thinking of taking that vacation? Tyrion chuckled. Perhaps somewhere warmer next time. Back at Winterfell, the snows continued to fall, but the storm that had loomed so ominously had passed. The wolf and the lion had stood together once more, and through their courage and unity, the realm was reborn. And so, as night descended upon the north, the fires of hope burned brightly, illuminating a future forged by the bonds of fire and ice.